The views, statements, and opinions expressed in this episode are solely our own, including our guest, and these do not necessarily represent those of our employers.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Hi, I'm Georgie.
And I'm Theron.
Welcome to our podcast, Diversity and Inclusion, Satisfying the Tick Box.
In celebration of International Women's Day, we have a very, very special guest on today, Sue Blight, who will be covering a journey as a self-employed executive coach to motherhood and being a breast cancer survivor. Sue, welcome to our podcast. Can you give us a quick introduction to yourself?
Yes, I'm as you said, an exec coach. I've had my own business for about 7 years now and coached a wide range of people. I've also do a lot of webinars around global companies and also face-to-face training as well. So in essence, I've always been in the learning and development field. I have twin girls, of which Georgie is one, I also have a very needy border collie that needs lots of walking, so he gets me out and about, and also still with George's father as well. So we live in Brighton on the coast, which is beautiful. Very happy.
Yeah, welcome, Mum. That was a solid intro. So we're just going to start with kind of your professional career and that side of things. So
Sure.
Can you just kind of share with us how your journey as an executive coach for leadership development began and kind of what inspired you to pursue that career path?
It's a good question. Because I think when you start out in your career, you don't really know unless you've got a professional inclination, like being a doctor or an architect. You really don't know when you come out of university what you want to do. But one of the things I did really enjoy was engaging with people, what makes them tick, and building relationships. So I actually started as a graduate for Miss Selfridge and worked around the country. So did quite a lot of traveling around the country. And the thing that I enjoyed most was getting my team promoted or getting them to become assistant branch managers in other parts of the country. So on that basis, after 5 years, I was exhausted and wanted to do something else. And really that drove me to go into training and development and started delivering training to places like British Steel, British Rail at the time. So big contracts, and that involved leadership development. So it was a natural progression into that space. I guess where I got to exec coaching was after doing a number of head of learning and development roles. So I was in sort of large blue chip organizations, FTSE 250 companies, delivering that function. I decided that if I didn't try my own business, I'd never know. So I was getting to that point where I either stay where I was doing what I was doing or take that leap. So I had that conversation with my boss, and we agreed that I would go, but they would support me. So it was a very mature conversation, actually, but quite brave to sort of put yourself out there, and when you have the fear of the unknown, what's going to happen. The big thing for me was Henley Business School, where I went back to school and learnt my trade and realised that I thought I was coaching people, but basically I was just telling them what to do. So I learned over 3 years doing a master's at Henley, what it was really to be a coach, and allow those people the space to explore and find their own solutions. And that set me up. I think Henley Business School as well was, has a lot of kudos. So that helped me to start that business.
Thank you for sharing that, Sue. And it's quite a distinguished career, I would say. And I can resonate with some of the stuff that you're saying because I'm going through that exact process in terms of what is it that I want to do. And I want to put it to you straight. How has it been for you being a woman in your area of expertise? Have you had or faced any challenges? Can you share any examples?
It's such an interesting question. I think when I was young, when I was in my early stages of career, and things have changed a lot since my early career. But I think it's what you choose to respond to. So if you're looking out for people sort of trying to trip you up, or seeing you as a woman which is inferior to a man, I think that if you look out for that, that's what you notice. But I think early on, when I was reflecting on this, I think I was interrupted quite a bit in meetings. I remember going to an exec meeting as well. I didn't really come across any sort of sexism, apart from one incident where I was running or facilitating a talent review with my exec, and my pen ran out, and I said, "Has anyone got a pen?" And the chief exec turned around and said, "Oh, you can use my pencil. There's plenty of lead in it." And it was just so, laden with sexism. I just looked at him and said, "Really? Is that the best?" And I think he was quite embarrassed. So I think as you get older, you can call those things out. I think in my exec coaching role, people choose whether they want you to coach them. So in the process, you give out your profile, and people will select you. So that sort of issue of a woman doesn't really come into my trade, so to speak, because they make that active choice that they want to work with me.
That's a really weird thing to say, to be honest. And I think, like you said, if you kind of look out for it, it's probably more obvious. But I also just wanted to take it back to obviously my childhood and growing up, and I always remember you working, and you still had a really good career when I was growing up. How did motherhood kind of affect your career? Did you ever find it kind of hindered it, or did it not really kind of have any effect on your career?
I think I always knew I wanted to work. I couldn't be a stay-at-home mum because you would just drive me crazy. But I think it's about having mature adult conversations with your employer. So I actually for a time went down, and I was very lucky. I was working at BAA at the airports at the time, and they had a lot of lots of flexible policies. So I had the conversation, and it was about 4 years, I was working part-time. So I worked 3 days a week, and I did it with a job share. So interestingly, the job share, she lived quite close to me. So we actually shared nannies as well. So, you navigate through, there's always a solution. And by having a full-time nanny, but we then sort of used them when we were working, that really helped. There were times when I was completely stressed out, and I do think you have to flex as well as the organisation, because there were times when I did have to work on the days that I wasn't working. And you have the classic guilt, if you're not in work, have I done everything I can? And when I'm at home and when I'm at work, what's happening with my kids, and that guilt of not being with you. So, but I did enjoy just being myself again and not being Georgie and Millie's mum, but actually Sue Blight as head of learning and development. So there is something about keeping your identity, which was really important for me.
Yeah, I think I really respect it, to be honest, because I think if I were to kind of ever have kids in the future, I think I would want the kind of to be the same, because I think it's so easy to maybe lose yourself when you have a kid. I mean, I can't really speak from experience, but I think just kind of getting straight back into it and having that support system around you, I think is really important when raising kids and also still pursuing your career.
Yeah, and there's, I think also I was very lucky to be with my partner, because who is very structured, and it got to a point where we did things like we had a spreadsheet. So who was picking up who was dropping off in the morning, who was picking up the kids in the afternoon, because there were occasions early on where we both turned up or neither of us turned up. So we did this spreadsheet, and that sort of guided us with childcare. And we could anticipate things that were coming up, but it was important that it was an equal share.
Having that structure as well, Sue, does help. And of course, I'm not good with spreadsheets, so that's a no-go for me. But I want to ask you then, and this is your opportunity, who was the naughtiest? Was it Millie or was it Georgie?
Both. Sorry. They
Wow.
they both wound each other up.
Oh,
That's
twins.
that's twins for you, yeah.
Yeah. The big dilemma with twins is that when one thinks the other one is the favourite. So that was an ongoing sort of trying to prove I haven't got one favourite, but I think there is always that tension with twins. But I think that could be another podcast in itself.
We better get Millie on one day, so hopefully
Yeah,
that's in the pipeline. But Sue, I wanted to move on to, breast cancer and
yeah.
being a survivor of breast cancer, because that's
Mm,
quite a powerful aspect of your story. Can you take us
sure.
through, the initial moments of diagnosis and how that experience shaped your perspective on life and work? And what advice would you give to others facing similar challenges?
Yeah. Well, I was diagnosed. Well, I felt a lump in my breast um, just one Saturday night, and it just felt a bit weird that I found it. So, luckily, I've got a very good friend who's a nurse, and I phoned her the next day, and she basically said, "Get to the doctors, get your diagnosis. It might be nothing, Da, da, da." So we did. I got that diagnosis very, very quickly, and yeah, it is a shock, because you do think, you're going to live forever, and you look at all of these other people that that are diagnosed, and you think it's never going to happen to you, but we do know 1 in 2 people is going to get cancer. So it was a shock, but interestingly, I think some of the leadership development that I was involved in, and my coaching has taught me about you can only control the controllables. So I could worry excessively for hours and hours about, oh, I've got cancer. But for me, it was like, right, what have I got to do? What's the next stage? And my other half, he's very practical. So he was getting all the appointments in the diary and getting the diagnosis quickly. Let's get going. And I think it's just that whole thing about I can spend a lot of time worrying, or I can spend a lot of time getting myself ready. So things like I had my hair cut really short, and then when that hair started dropping out, I just went to my hairdresser saying, just shave it all off. And you just have to confront things. Once it's done, it's done. And yeah, I think the support that I had taught me a lot about who is important in your life. So I had, in terms of my treatment, I had 6 chemotherapy treatments, one every 3 weeks. After that, I had, I was that actually cured or reduced the tumor down to nothing. So the surgery I had was just taking biopsies to make sure that there were no other rogue cells around. And then for good measure, I had some radiotherapy as well. So it's just each of them. You take one day at a time. You think about how you feel, what you're up to for the day. But interesting work was really important for me, to keep that going, because it goes back to that identity. I'm not going to be swallowed up by this, horrible disease. So what I found was I got into a rhythm of, the first week I would do no work because you do feel absolutely rubbish. And there were times when I couldn't even get out of bed. But second and third week got a lot better. So I did plan in work for those 2 weeks. So that worked really well for me.
Yeah, I remember obviously when you found out, I think it was just devastating news at the time. But then I think the resilience that you had, and I don't know, I just think the perspective that you took on it was that you can only, like you said, control what you can control. So yeah, I think, and also you staying at work and trying to work as much as possible, I think that
Yeah.
kind of, I don't know, it kind of eased my mind anyway. I don't know about Millie, but you just kind of had such a positive view on it. And I think you can only, obviously, with Dad and his logical brain and
Yeah.
him saying, right, we're going to do this, this, and this, I think that definitely helps ease the kind of panic and the feelings of, I don't know, just sadness and when you find out that news. So
Mm, mm. And the other thing is, I think, my clients were really supportive as well. And, being a contractor, it's very easy to turn around and say, well, if you're not available for work, then, we'll find someone else. And there's plenty of my colleagues around that could have easily done that work. But they were, I think, being honest and upfront really helped. And they were saying, what can we do to support you? So I think, again, it's a choice point, isn't it? Whether you go public with it or do you keep it to yourself? And that is entirely people's choice. I went absolutely public. I set up a WhatsApp group with colleagues and friends and family. So one of the things, one of my best friends who unfortunately died of cancer a few years ago, she said, it's the admin around cancer, everyone texting you and I have to text back each time. So I thought, I'm not having that. I'll just set up a WhatsApp group and I will tell them before each treatment what's going on. So they didn't feel that they had to keep phoning me the whole time. And that really helped.
And I can imagine in terms of that suit, it comes as a shock to
Yeah.
everybody, and you need that space and also that time as well to recover. But I wanted to ask you, Georgie, in terms of seeing your mum go through that, did it affect you personally or in a professional setting?
yeah, I think it's always a shock, isn't it? It's kind of like your worst fear is hearing that one of your close family members has got cancer. But I think, like I said, it's just your perspective on it and kind of, I remember you creating that WhatsApp group. There was about
Mm.
60 people, maybe even more. And I was just thinking, I don't even know that many people. But like just seeing the support on there and seeing that you've got such a good kind of support system. And I think just doing little things like I remember I had a juicer, or I still have the juicer,
Yeah.
but making you juices every week just to make sure that you got all your nutrients, because I remember your appetite going quite a lot, which was
Mm.
obviously quite sad, and just making sure that you've got kind of all your nutrients. So making those juices really helped. And yeah, I think the saddest part was also when you obviously lost your hair. I think that's when it
Yeah.
kind of felt quite real. But even like your perspective on that, like you were like, yeah, I kind of like it, and you went to the wig shop, and
Yeah.
yeah, I just think your perspective and your approach to it was just amazing.
Oh, thanks, George. Well, as I say, you can be busy worrying about it, or control what you can control. And I think also I involved you in all the consultant meetings as well, and I thought, that's really important that close family come along to that and hear the same message as me. And one of the things I think is different nowadays is cancer isn't a death sentence. There's so many treatments now, and even the consultant was saying, we can cure this, given the right treatments. This is not a worry for us that you have this type of cancer. We have seen it before, and I think just that comfort. You do put you put yourself in the hands of the consultant, and you really rely on them that they know what they're talking about, because you have no idea what you're going to experience, and you cannot advise other people because everyone's treatment is different, everyone's experience, how your body responds, everything is different. So I never give advice on people who have now found that they have cancer. All you can do is support them and ask the right questions.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was kind of leads quite nicely onto my next question, and just around kind of what advice you would offer to women navigating their careers, especially facing kind of challenges like breast cancer, things like that. I guess, like you said, you can't give advice on if they like the cancer, but have you got any advice that you would kind of offer to help them?
Specifically around managing cancer and work, or just generally about careers?
Yeah, just around if they've kind of got a diagnosis, things like that.
Um, I think everyone has to find their own path and what's important to them. So work was really important to me. So I knew I wasn't going to give that up completely. But some people just want to protect themselves, look after themselves. They get worried about things like because you do lose all your immunity, for instance. So you have to make choices on what you're willing to do, what you'll tolerate. So I think my advice would be just find your own path. Do what you want to do. Don't let other people tell you what to do.
That's actually really, really good advice. And I wanted to then ask you, Sue, managing a career, motherhood,
Yeah.
and overcoming a serious self challenge, that requires significant resilience. What self-care practices have been crucial to you during these challenging times?
I do a lot of reflection. So especially, writing things down, I think is really important. So what things like what are you grateful for? Because you lose sense of that, especially during treatment. You're grateful every day that you wake up and you're still here, but other things that you start to notice, like when I take the dog out on a really sunny day, just being grateful for that. But also, have I been at my best today? Have I done everything today that I wanted to do? When was I at my best? When could I have shifted the dial a bit with either a conversation or a webinar that I'd run? So I think there's that reflection time is really, really important. And yeah, just taking eating what you want to eat, taking care of your nutrition. And the juices that Georgie gave me, it was almost like my tick to say, well, I've got all my vitamins today, so that's great. So I think just taking time out, pressing the pause button, thinking about what you're grateful for. How have you been today as a person? Have I been at my best? I would say are the key things. And walking the dog, is very mindful as well. So those mindful practices are really good.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we've covered a lot in this episode today, and we always kind of end our episodes with a key takeaway. And in light of International Women's Day, what would be your kind of key takeaway across all of the topics we've covered? So obviously your professional, motherhood, and being a breast cancer survivor. Is there any key takeaway that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I found a quote years ago, which I've always it's been my North Star really, all the way through navigating my life. And it's by Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said, no one can make you inferior without your consent. So that's applied to my work. So if I choose that people are going to make me feel bad, then that's up, that's up to them. So if I choose to get triggered by certain people, then that's my choice to get triggered. But I have to actively get triggered and respond to that. I think with my treatment as well, I wasn't going to be a cancer victim. I was going to be a warrior. So again, not making me feel inferior. I didn't want to feel that victim. And I think also in relationships as well, if you have that confidence that you know yourself well, that's what guides you. And people, not everyone will like you, but not being worried about that. Just doing your best, I think, is a message.
Wow, Sue, I am stealing that quote. I'm gonna steal that and use that because, like I said, and a lot of us are still navigating through life and its challenges. But
Yeah.
thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Sue, and thank you for being so open with us and candidly sharing your story with us. I know it's a very brave thing to do, and it's also inspiring for a lot of people.
Great. Well, if I've helped in any way, that's my job done.
Yeah, I wanted to also say thank you for coming on, Mum. It's been really nice to have you on the podcast. And also just hearing these different aspects of your life, because I don't think I've ever actually asked you these questions about your career and things like that. It's really, really good to hear. And yeah, thank you to our listeners as well for joining us this week. Make sure you're following our podcast on Spotify, and feel free to give it a rating and review as well.
And Georgie, before we go, I just wanted to ask you a question, just slip it in there. Who's your favorite? Is it mum or dad?
I can't answer that. I love them for different things. I know Dad will be listening to this, so I'm going to say both.
Great answer. Thank you so much. And keep your eyes peeled for our next guest and episode, which will be dropping next month. Thank you again, and we'll see you next time on Diversity and Inclusion, Satisfy the Tick Box.